Welcome to Layers of Blacks, where we talk about the white, the black, and the gray of girls lacrosse. This is Karen Blaine, and my co-host Mike Johnson is with us, neck brace on and ready to go. Mike will share his story with you on a separate podcast titled We Are Back. But meanwhile, we're going to get right to it. And this particular episode is called When the Right Call is Not Necessarily the Right Call. What do you think about that title, Mike?
First of all, it is great to be back. It's a long story. Like you said, look out for another podcast, a short little blast where I can give you a little bit of the backstory with some of the things I've been dealing with this year. But yeah, of course, I always like these shows, Karen, when we talk about the third leg. A lot of officials are starting to get a handle on the rules, getting a handle on positioning. And now it's that game management, what's best for the game, and seeing that big picture third leg stuff.
That is exactly right. And when Mike talks about the third leg, for those of you that haven't been with us all that long, we're talking about the third leg of a stool, how you keep everything in balance. We're also talking about the ability, as you've been officiating for a little while, as you're growing your skills, to not only understand the rules, which is so fundamental. It's one of our points of emphasis for this year, knowledge of the rules. But it also is important that as you get comfortable with the rules and don't have to think or panic about them, that you can then start understanding the flow of the game. Because sometimes, although you see and know the right call in that moment of the game, it's better to hold or to pause or to see what happens next before necessarily putting air in the whistle. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We'll talk about when the right call is not necessarily the right call. And when we wrap this up towards the end of today's session, we're going to take a moment or two to talk about the things that in my observation and in Mike's observation as we're chatting might be those that we're letting go. And doggone it, in every game we should not. So this is talk about the elevated game management part of our game. It's NFHS focused, but there is some application to NCAA play because we're talking about layers, about understanding and appreciating the rules and the beautiful flow of this game. We know that every time we blow our whistle for a foul, we hold our arm out to hold, we raise our flag to acknowledge that we are recognizing that a player or a team has been disadvantaged. That's what fouls are. So let's consider that not calling a foul is sometimes the same thing. Sometimes we don't call a foul, even though someone has met the criteria of being pushed or being bumped or something happening, because we don't want to disadvantage that player and they're doing something that is still really good and just what they want to be doing. So for the official to put air in a whistle would take them further off the path of what they want to do. They got a bump from the defender and they're still moving strong and fast towards goal. And then the official shuts them down. So now they've gotten a wham and a wham when at least the officials should be able to think, yes, by rule, they were disadvantaged, but I'm going to wait on that because I see the game and I see that that player is continuing to do just what they wanted to do. And I'm not going to further disadvantage them by shutting them down. Because as Mike and I were chatting pre-recording today, we were sharing some, as we always do, some war stories. And I said, I've had some instances and discussions with lovely refs that have done this a while, refs that have done this a short while, whatever. And sometimes they're not understanding that next layer. They're saying, but this is a rule. And I'm like, yes, but we want to look bigger. So it's not always so black and white. So we'll start with outside the CSA. I'm going to talk about midfield because that just kind of helps us picture the field. If we're in midfield in a high school game and we see an attack player running down the field that gets fouled, pushed, bumped, in any way disadvantaged, we have a choice to make. Is it egregious enough that we put air in a whistle? Or do we put an arm out and hold and let that player keep going, but we acknowledge the foul? What we don't want to do is just wait without doing anything and see what happens next, because then we haven't told anybody that we see anything bad happening. The thing in high school that we have to understand is that if we blow our whistle, the attack player with the ball has to give us a pause. So she must break her stride. She has to slow down. So we've immediately said that that foul is so big that it's important to make her pause, stop her forward momentum, give us a pause before she continues. We're also saying if we put air in our whistle, we blow the foul, that the offenders must go away or behind. I will share, and Mike, in large part, we are holding the attack player accountable to give us the pause, but we are often not in any way holding the defender who fouled accountable to move away or behind. Again, two sides of the same coin. A worst case is when we don't hold the attack player accountable either. So now we're not meeting any of the rules. We decided to call the foul. If we're not going to make anyone respond to the rules of high school play, then we should have put an arm out. We should have held it. I don't have a problem with that. If you want to hold it and say, I see a foul, but I'm going to let her keep moving, go ahead. But if you're going to put air in your whistle, then you've got to hold them accountable to the self-start rules. Now, here's the next layer of that one. If we do that and the attack player gives us a pause, and between the pause and when she initiates play, that means she has to pass the ball or give a step. It's not the pivot. It's not the cradle. It's not any of that. We know that. That's the self-start rule. So she has not yet stepped and she has not yet thrown the ball. She's just giving us a pause. Maybe she stops. I don't know. In that moment, if the defender tries to engage, takes a step towards the ball carrier before the ball carrier has initiated play, we're not to let her do that. We know that. We're supposed to reset that defender. Here's the next layer. If we do that, and while we're doing that, so the attack player has paused and then has made a pass, and that pass is going exactly where she wants it to go. It's initiating play with strength and momentum, just how she wants to do it. And that defender took a step towards her in that same breath or the breath before the pass. Should we stop that play and put that defender back again and make the attack player do it over? Does our action add another layer of disadvantage to the already offended player?
Right.
If your head is spinning right now, I just want you to think about that. Yes, the defender is supposed to move away or behind. That's the result of her having fouled. But if the attack player restarts very quickly and has met the criteria of a self-start, we don't want to nail her again because her opponent who fouled her is doing something wrong again. You could even put your arm out again and show, I saw it, but I'm not going to slow down this ball carrier again. So let's think about that because we're having some folks, by that I mean officials, that are so focused on the black and white rules in the rule book that they're not understanding advantage and disadvantage. So I'll paint one more picture. Somebody runs into me, I have the ball, and they bump me. The official decides to blow the foul. I pause and I go. If while I'm going, that defender takes a step into me, but it doesn't even slow me down, doesn't take me off path, doesn't do a thing to me, and I'm doing exactly what I want to do, please don't stop me again and make that player go behind me. You have now hurt me twice.
With officials not fully understanding the gray, we understand that's going to be the case with the newer officials. It's a lot to take in and it takes a lot of experience. Do you feel that we're seeing that situation also with veteran officials?
I think sometimes yes, because it can be twofold. We have veteran officials who maybe do other levels of play and they don't enforce the pause at all on the self-starter. Well, now we have a big mess. Because now we have a ball carrier that hasn't even broken stride. And by the way, we don't cross-reference a lot, but you don't have that requirement in college. You don't have to pause at all. So because they're in some games where we don't have to have an offended player pause at all, they allow that in high school. That's a problem. Because now, worst case scenario, we have a kid that was never told to pause, run in and shoot and score. Now we've created a mess. Even all season, if you've done this, saying coaches and captains, I want to remind everybody, in high school play, got to give me a pause. Now, will that change down the road? I don't know. Maybe it will. That'd be great. But right now, it's a rule of play. Got to give me a pause. And I'm not saying a screeching halt. A momentary pause, acknowledge my whistle, then take off. It's a great pregame. Great pregame with your crew. Great little tiny thing to cover with coaches and captains. We're going to hold you accountable. If we have to pull you back, that's unfortunate, but that's on you. And then the others, if by not moving away or behind, they have impeded the ball carrier from doing what they'd like to do, okay, clean that up. But if they have not, don't stop the play again. That's when making the right call is not the right thing to do. Okay, so we're going to try to hold. If we need to whistle, we will midfield. If we do that whistle, we're going to hold the ball carrier accountable to the pause, and we're going to use our very good judgment on whether that step off away or behind by the defender was a further disadvantage to the ball carrier or not. If they didn't do what they were supposed to do and it did not, we can put an arm up, but we don't stop play again. So I would say that's one of the big ones when the right call is not the right call. Here's another one. I would say this can be on both sides of the fence as well. Midfield, and this could be any place. And I do see this from a lot of veteran officials, Mike, and I see this from a lot of officials that do multiple sports. Our beautiful game of lacrosse, girls lacrosse, used to be a non-contact sport. That's certainly not true at all anymore. We are a contact sport, but we are a legal contact sport, and we are not allowed to have illegal contact. Our illegal contact is very different from soccer. Our illegal contact is very different from basketball or football or anything else. In our sport, you may not push a player off their path. You may not displace them, hit, push, disregard player safety, that kind of thing. My caution, or the thing I would really request of officials to just consider, if we have a ground ball and no one has possession, and one player is pushing and shoving, trying to move her opponent off a path so that she can have better access to that ball, it's no longer a 50-50 ball. She has illegally contacted her opponent. Her opponent should get the ball. Her opponent should not have to keep pushing and shoving to try to pick up that ball. We let that happen all the time in high school. If the player already had the ball and is getting pushed and shoved a little bit, then you might want to put your arm up and see if she can get through it without too much trouble and maintain her momentum. If she already has possession. If she doesn't have possession, blow your whistle immediately because she just earned it. That's her ball. When I see officials watching two people scramble with the ball on the ground and one is hip checking the other one, and there's no call, and there's no call, and there's no call. It's illegal in our game. Illegal contact.
You're saying that in those situations, those 50-50 situations, we're letting too much contact go in that situation.
Yeah, if there's a little incidental contact while two people are equally going after a 50-50 ball, no call. Let them keep going. If we can see that one player is pushing another player off her legal path, trying to take her space, it's no longer a 50-50 ball.
Gotcha.
It's an awarded ball to the offended player. Okay. I think we have to change our thinking on that a little bit because we let too much go there. The other one, we have no problem making the right call on check to the head. I think everybody knows what that is. And it can hit the head, it can hit the neck, it can hit the shoulders, and we're going to get that pretty quick. Everybody has the signal down, everybody stops play. That's great. But are we making the right call when we see a hard push shove hit with a stick to a player's side, back, shoulders? Are we immediately carding that? Not all the time. We're just not. And should we? Yes, 100% of the time. It's called dangerous contact. I know we talked about this last year, Mike, and we said, does everybody out there even know what the dangerous contact signal is? If you don't, you should. It's taking the palm of your hand and pushing it away from your chest out into the air in front of you. And my right hand is gripping my left wrist. That's the dangerous contact signal. And that's a cardable foul 100% of the time. If you do it and you do it immediately and consistently, that foul will really be greatly minimized in our games. But when it's a surprise to players because they've been getting away with it on many games, I think that's a shame. Does a player have to hit the ground because they've been pushed that hard? No, that's not part of the rule. If they've been pushed at all from a defenseless position, and I'm sorry, if you come in at somebody from the side, the back, the hips, the shoulders, kidney punch, you're not even facing your opponent. That is the absolute definition of a defenseless position.
Yeah.
Easy, card it. That was one. And the other one's a slash. All of us have let slashes go. Every single one of us. And we know when we do it, don't we, Mike?
Yeah.
We know when we do it. So if a kid has a disregard for player safety, they take a big swing, it starts over their head and they come through, and it's usually after they get beat and they're taking one more swipe, and you know that it's not a controlled check. It's not. It's a big swing. You got to shut that down for a couple of reasons. The first and the most important is the safety of the player that they're swinging at. But does it have to be right at the player? What if there's a yard in between? Is it still a slash? It is still a slash. Now, 10 yards, no. But if at all they're swinging at a player in some proximity to the player, what you're doing is saying that behavior is not part of the legal play of this game. We're not going to have that today. So that's why you're making the call, because you're managing the game and you're saying, my game, my jurisdiction, and I will be in charge of player safety today. So you card it. Great. So we're talking about a little bit about making the right call when the black and white is not being applied or when the black and white is being applied. And both times you have to look at the next layer and say, did I blow it? Either way, did I call it too tight or did I not call it at all? Now, what if we move into the inside of the CSA and talk about the same kind of thing? The easy thing is we know in the CSA, anytime the attack that has the ball fouls the defense, the ball's coming out. That's easy. If attack is offsides, easy. Defense gets the ball. But what about when the defense fouls? When do we put a whistle on it and when do we not? What about when defense comes over the restraining line? The ball might be in the CSA, the ball might be outside, but defense comes offsides. Now we see it a lot, but we think, well, we don't have to call defense. And you're right, in high school, by rule, it's our discretion. It's the official's discretion, the official's judgment. If that player did not impact play, you don't have to call it. I'm going to suggest to you that most of the time that's fine, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's habitual that the defense team has players at the restraining line that anytime the ball comes near that, or as the last attack coming over the restraining, they give a last swipe and they take a step or two offsides every single time the ball comes down the field. So I'm going to tell you, you should call that for a couple of reasons. The rule would say you blow your whistle, you're going to correct the offside. So we're going to get 4 people back. You can call it even if she steps back and say white was offsides, but they've corrected themselves. But you can still time out and call offsides. Here's the thing. When you do that, you take another player, not one of the 4. And I don't care where the ball is. If the ball's on the restraining line, I don't care. You take a 5th player and put that player behind the ball carrier, and then you whistle start. So now you have disadvantaged the team. Right. And that's important. I called it the other day, and the girl that went back on sides felt that she was in a position to also be behind the ball carrier. I said, no, that's correcting the offsides, but you're not disadvantaged, are you, for having fouled? So I took a 5th player behind the ball carrier, and then you whistle start. And that's why we need to make this call. Number one, to shut down the illegal practice that I think is part of a strategic initiative sometimes. And also, offense gets to be essentially a man up for a moment or two. They get to have 7-on-6 for a moment because that's the penalty. Mm-hmm. If the ball happened to have been in the CSA when you catch defense stepping off and stepping on, they get at the top of the 12 with an open lane. So you have to be ball aware. Where's the ball? What's defense? And this giving a pass to defense every single time they're offside, that's wrong. We've got to get over that and call it a couple of times. Call it correctly when it should be called. We have to know the difference between when somebody steps off and on and it had zero impact on the game and when they're habitually using that to try to get one last swinging on the ball carrier and they should be shut down. Here's another one. As we're growing our game, we all know that by rule, black and white, 3 seconds can be called as soon as the ball crosses the restraining line. That's what the rule book says. Now, we have to think about why would they have a rule like that? Well, if you cross the restraining line and somebody is planted in the middle of the 8 and there's no other players around and somebody's on a fast break, then they might also be in shooting space. But the whole intent of a 3-second call is that you're not supposed to be able to take up space in the 8-meter arc to shut down the strategic intent of attack. That's not fair. You're supposed to be marking a player, either another defender or the ball carrier. If you're marking the ball carrier, it can be multiple players. If you're marking another defender, it's 1-on-1. But we're supposed to be playing this game, not just taking up space. Also for safety with shooting space. Okay, if somebody comes fast break over that restraining line is going right to goal, let's make sure that that 8-meter arc area is clear and clean. If we have a team that's all set up in the CSA, attack and defense, and we just have regular play going and we're passing the ball around and so forth, and attack is doing exactly what they want to do. Maybe they're a team that passes and has plays, passes and passes and passes. Maybe it's down below the goal line, extended and wide. We want to make sure we're seeing the game. Are you one of those officials that somebody puts a toe on the line and you're just 1, 2, I'm going to get her? By the way, do not think for a moment I'm saying don't call 3 seconds. If somebody's breaking up a play, absolutely call it, and we're responsible to call it. What I'm also saying, though, is if you are so focused on counting to 3 instead of understanding the game, I've seen way too many games broken up and fragmented and frustrated and upset by officials overcalling that and wrecking the game for the attack. You keep making attack stop their strategy so you can do gotchas on a kid that was interrupting nothing that the attack was trying to do. So are you seeing the game, or are you just so proud of yourself for counting to 3?
Right.
Okay. And by the way, some of us have a real quick 3 count. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. It's 1, 2, 3. And depending on the skill level of the team and where you are in the country, there's never anything wrong, Mike. If it's a lower level skill team, you could say, get a girl. And I'm talking high school.
Right. Mark
up, or you're 1, 2, but there should be no victory or satisfaction in calling 3 seconds 19 times in a game.
Right. Preventative officiating.
That would be nice. Now, if we're at a real high level quick game and somebody's taking up space they're not entitled to, nail them. Call 3 seconds and administer it correctly. Absolutely. But let's understand the game we're watching. And when we talked about before how some people get so upset and are so unsportsmanlike to officials, understand our responsibility not to create the frustration with gotcha stuff that destroys or fragments the game. Here's another example. Is it the right call by rule? Yes. Is it the wrong call in the moment? Yep. True example I've seen twice this year. Attacks coming in to shoot. We don't have simultaneous whistles in high school. A whistle is called as the shot gets fired. Attack gets a beautiful shot off and scores, but there's a call made because defense was behind the circle with a foot on the line. Oh my goodness. Is it a call when defense has a foot on the line? Is that a foul? Yes, it is. Should that have been a moment when we swallow our whistle and let attack have their shot? Because once we blow that whistle, we got to take the goal back.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, it's a goal circle foul. We can't even give them a hash. We have to give them the dot. So now they shot and scored, and we have to take them below the goal line extend and put them on a dot. So we called a right call, right? When defense touched that circle, that's the right call.
Right.
It's in the rule book. We absolutely can blow our whistle for that. Was it the right thing to do? Absolutely not. That's when we saw the rule book and we knew the rule, but do we understand the game? Okay, let's let this beautiful game develop. Do we know, and this is something for all of us, and me too, are we really, 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 really working to think flag it, flag it, flag it, flag it? If you see major fouls by defense when attack is in the CSA, get that flag up every single time. Even if there's a hairbreadth between flag and whistle, just keep working on that because you'll be so happy when you flag it and they shoot it. And we don't have a simultaneous whistle, but if you flag simultaneous with a shot, you can call the goal. If you blow your whistle, you cannot. If you flag it, you can. So flag, 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 flag. Let's just keep working on that. It will make you feel great when you get your flag up instead of shutting it down a play because you're whistled and you wish you hadn't. So we've just been talking about things we really need to do better recognizing. And now here's a couple of things I wish we would not let go. When the goalie gets the ball and we have an attack player right outside the goal circle, that's fine. But do we picture that goal circle as a plastic cylinder that comes up? It doesn't come in like a cone. It comes straight up the sides. It's like a nice round cylinder that goes straight up. The circle continues. And that attack player reaches her cross in, doesn't she? She breaks that goal circle to reach in towards that goalie. That is illegal. Do we allow that every single time? Sometimes we say, get it out, and she gets it out. But when the goalie's making a pass, they come right in with it to try to check the stick of the goalie.
Right.
That's illegal. Now, here's the thing. If the goalie gets a beautiful pass off, okay, don't shut the goalie down. Then you show your arm. If anything happens where that goalie doesn't get the pass off that she might have liked to, you put a whistle on it and make that attack player go behind and give the ball back to the goalie. That's the right thing to do. Are we doing that? Are we managing that attack player on the circle like we should? Here's another one. Are we all understanding that when there's a boundary ball error below the goal line extended in the CSA, that if there's a boundary reentry error, it's a foul? We have to go to a dot.
Right.
Now, let's think about this. We have to go to a dot if the defense makes a boundary error. So defense got the ball, the goalie's team got the boundary ball, and they made an error coming in. They threw it from out of bounds, whatever they did. Then attack gets a dot and a whistle start. If attack got the boundary ball and made an error, then Mike, what happens with defense? Do they have to go to a dot?
They can take off.
They can self-start, right? Defense can self-start. They step into the field and off they go. So this is twofold. Number one, we have to know that. It's different for attack and defense. Number two, I've seen so many officials this year think that our new self-start rule for defense in the CSA only applies for the goal line extended and above. I don't know why. It doesn't say that anywhere in the rule book. All in the CSA, above or below the goal line extended, if attack fouls defense, defense can self-start, including the goalie in her circle. I see again and again with people below the goal line extend and making defense go to a dot, putting attack behind and whistle starting them. Why? It's all a self-start unless we're in the last 2 minutes of each half.
I think it's a good reminder, even for beginners or even veterans, that CSA, that does extend all the way to the end line.
Yeah, I think we're losing that somehow. So I'm going to leave it with that. The next show we believe will be charge or no charge. That is the question, because we have players, coaches, and officials disagreeing on what the criteria of a charge will be. We're so happy to be back. I'm so happy my friend Mike is on the road to recovery, and he'll fill you in on that. And we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Layers of Lax podcast. The show can be found on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Spotify. Subscribe to the show to receive alerts on when new episodes are published. If you like the show, please do us a favor and give us a rating and a review. That'll really help us grow our audience. You can reach us via email at layersoflax@gmail.com. and follow us on Twitter at LaxLayers. Please send your questions, topics, and case plays, and we'll do our best to address them in future episodes. Thank you again, and keep tuning into the Layers of Lax.